So, good morning, afternoon, and evening, everybody, and welcome to you all. Um, I know that we're really so happy that all of you are here. So, I'm Jan Jeremias, one of your hosts today. I'm an integrative health and wellness coach and author who works with people and pets to help them overcome health challenges and live healthier lives. And I'm really excited to be joined on stage with my dear collaborator, co-host, dear friend, the amazing and very kind Mary Jane McQueen. And so, Mary Jane, I'll pass it back to you.
And thanks, Jan. So, as Jan mentioned, I am Mary Jane or MJ McQueen, the founder of my own creative studio where I help entrepreneurs to step into their light and share their gifts authentically, helping them to find their voice and reconnect with their own creativity and helping them to co-create their own visuals that align with their mission. Because when we connect with our true selves, we really do connect well with others. And as always, I'm honored to be here today with all of you for some meaningful and hopefully enlightening conversation, along with my beautiful friend and collaborator, Jan Jeremias, who is my companion on the mission to spread kindness, empathy, and compassion, rippling that out into the world after bringing that to ourselves. And she inspires me always for shining brightly. So we're just really happy to be here with you today. And Jan, I guess I'll start with the poem, shall I?
Yep. Feel free to start with our beautiful poem.
So appropriately, it's named Teach to and to Learn. A truth shared is never alone. It ripples quietly, gathering meaning as it moves. We teach not to fill another, but to empty our knowing into the open. And there, in that vulnerable offering, we meet ourselves again. Sometimes clearer, sometimes questioned, always changed. There's no pedestal here, no above or below, only a circle, only breath exchanged, and the subtle unfolding of wisdom made visible in another's eyes. The teacher listens, the student speaks, roles dissolve in the sacred reciprocity of being witnessed in our becoming. And in the quiet moments, a gaze held, a truth hesitantly spoken, a silent nod of understanding, we remember we are always both. To teach is to open, to learn is to receive. To do either well is to be willing to do both.
Thank you so much, Mary Jane. Really is a beautiful, beautiful poem. So we welcome you, and we're so grateful you're here. And I wanted to begin once again by sharing a meaningful moment from my yoga teacher training, which is where this title came. A moment that continues to guide so much of what I do and what Mary Jane and I do together. So during my yoga teacher training, a mantra was shared with me, and that was when one teaches, two, the number two, learn. At first, it felt like a lovely idea, but as I stepped into the role of yoga teacher, health and wellness coach, and workshop facilitator with Mary Jane, I began to live that truth. And we together began to share that truth. Over and over again, we have entered spaces ready to share what we know, only to learn, to leave having learned something new from the people we were there to support. whether it's a story that touches us deeply, a question that shifts our perspective, or a quiet insight that ripples through the group. We teach, but we're also transformed. In every workshop and gathering, we've witnessed this exchange. We often offer what we've learned from study, experience, and life, and then we listen. We stay open. And in that openness, something sacred happens. Two people learn. There's another layer to this too. Sometimes we teach to better understand. When we guide others through a concept, speak it out loud, or hold space for their questions, we're also deepening our own relationship to the material. We teach to learn. We teach to remember. So as we open up this space together, we invite you to reflect on where in your life you've been both teacher and student. Where have you shared something only to be changed by the one you shared it with? Let this be one of those spaces where we learn from each other, grow in community, and honor the beauty of mutual learning. Let's take a deep breath together and let's begin.
Such beautiful perspective, Jan. I just thank you for sharing that. It's just there is a beauty in the mutual learning. Um, it's it's surprising and not surprising. Sometimes the little nuggets of things that I know that we've received after doing our workshops and we do our little debriefs, we're we're always amazed and grateful and blessed to have received so many beautiful insights from um the that we are sharing space with the people there. So it's just lovely to gain that perspective and you know and just really to remember that, as the poem was saying, is that we're always uh, both teacher and student, no matter no matter what the situation, um, whatever it is. It's definitely, it can be a situation where it's a learning situation in the sense of there could be things happening that we have no control over and we learn, but we also have moments for teaching.
Absolutely. And it doesn't necessarily always happen immediately, where all of a sudden, someone shares something with you after an event or after the circumstance, and they like send you a message and you're like, oh, okay, I saw this, I thought of you, and you realize and in it, there's a deepening, there's a further, um, like merging or like an immersive experience into that information or into what was shared, and what they say in response or what they share in response becomes this further learning that then ends up rippling out. I mean, it carries through. And so true. I think that we live those experiences all the time if we're open to see them enough, if we're willing to be present and for those exchanges and to realize that we don't know everything and we know very little. And I think the more I'm immersed with other people, the more I realize how little I know. So,
And we can still
Shannon,
smile about it and be grateful for that, though, right? Because
right,
we're still
exactly, exactly. We have to be. Seamus?
Yeah, thanks, John. Thanks, Mary Jane. Yeah, I was just immediately thinking about like Thich Nhat Hanh, that lovely book called Teachings on Love. And he spoke about this very topic, like the fact that there are no teachers and there are no students. It reminds me of the hierarchy that we're all going to get conditioned into in our everyday lives, like beginning with the hierarchy and the authority of our parents, I guess, and then in the school and in the workplace and in society in general. And what Thich Nhat Hanh wrote about it, kind of it's the theme today. Like we're so used and conditioned like to have these hierarchies in place, that we kind of then operate out of that conditioning, I suppose. But like Thich Nhat Hanh brought it home to me, the very fact, like what we're talking about right now, is there are no teachers and there are no students. We are all one and we're all connected. And kind of the older I get, I guess, the more I can see that with greater clarity that every moment is a teaching moment, from my inside out. And like you kind of mentioned the ripple effect there that we transmit, like when we really appreciate and value, like that we take ourselves out of the equation as an authority or an expert, and that we're humble enough to be able to actually realize there are no students and there are no teachers. And I think it changes everything really when you begin to operate from that space, of equality, equanimity, versus the space of authority and subordinates, I guess, you know. So yeah, that's kind of what's coming to mind, John.
Thank you, Seamus. I love that because I think you are so right. I think and I love I love Thich Nhat Hanh, so a huge fan. I've never read that one though. I'll have to maybe look for a copy of that, the one you referred to, that book. But there is this whole idea, I think that, I think there's such great freedom when we are able to take ourselves out of that because it takes a lot of the pressure off, right? That we have to, like, that whole idea of performing and being the best at something and, and all those kind of things tend to kind of decrease because there's really no pressure to be in that way. And you get to relax a little bit because you're like, oh, okay, well, I really don't need to know everything. And if I just go into every experience with this openness to learn and to be present, then that's the best form of transformation for the group or for a ripple effect to occur because no one gets trapped in this whole idea of like, the ego or they're the best, quote unquote, at something. And you just become much more open to the dialogue that occurs between to that space.
That's absolutely true. It's just it's just sort of leaning into to and being open and being our authentic selves, which I know in these circles we tend to speak of frequently. But it is really leaning into to that and allowing for that space to be held there and not to feel like we have to perform at every in every given moment, and the fact that you know really there is, even though I know the world likes to tell us that there's competition in everything that we do, um but why is it there should be space for everyone, no matter the context of what it is that they do. And maybe we don't need or want some people's um, lessons or the things that they're trying to teach us because that doesn't resonate with us, but that's okay. That they are if allowing that space for people to be, just to be.
And I think when you're in that space, I mean, it brings to mind as well, like very practical examples of, when you're operating from a space of not being a teacher or an expert, and you're offering a service. Okay, like I'm sure every one of us here has had an experience where we're working with a client or working with a group. And you know what? We almost feel guilty taking a payment because we've actually, got some huge insights working with a client who's paying us like in dollars or euros or whatever. And we're kind of saying, geez, I actually think I got more value out of that session than the client did. Because, and that's, I think, a real, like a practical experience of what we're talking about here. There are no teachers and there are no students, even though we set ourselves up in the services we offer in the external world. When it goes back to what you just mentioned, MJ, that brought that to mind, like is that when we're in that zone, that's where this mutual transfer of skills and knowledge and insights emerges. Like when we don't force ourselves to operate from the perspective of being the expert, or I'm delivering a service, we're so open and operating at a level of equanimity, and the same level. Like there are no teachers, there are no students. And I think that's when you're operating with that mutual respect, that's when the magic happens of this kind of very natural value that emerges. You mentioned the word dialogue there, John, I think as well. When you're having that type of dialogue, authentic dialogue, like Joseph Jarobowski talks about this as well, that's really when the magic happens, when there's a natural flow going on. And I think, I'd say all of us probably have experienced that when we're allowing ourselves to just be and be with another person, a client or a family member or whatever.
Absolutely, Seamus, and thank you. And the opposite happens also. It's when we're not. And then if we can see that, when something they've said or when we don't, let's say, respond in what we would say may be the best way, or when we feel like just don't feel that kind of, I don't want to say equanimity, or we've been ruffled in a little bit, and to kind of examine that, because then it's obviously there to teach us something in return. It teaches us something about ourselves. It also teaches us, I think all the aspects of non-judgment and everything of other people, you know, and that could be, we talk a lot about words, verbiage used, or the way they phrase something. It could be so many different things. But I think that, when we have a reaction that we don't really want to have, or we feel we have not articulated something appropriately or properly, we could have done a better job. It just teaches us more about how we navigate in the world, and what we, particularly depending on who you are, like what we might want to shift within ourselves so that we kind of understand where we're coming from and then can move accordingly.
Yeah, that's very true, Jan. It is it is always a learning experience. There's always that element of being able to take in something if we're willing to really um, listen. I mean, I think it all comes back in some sense to being an active listening, and also to listen with a lens of empathy and compassion and understanding. We may not understand the exact situation that somebody might be in that's communicating to us, that hope maybe has a lesson in a sense to share with us, but always to approach it from the lens of, with kindness, empathy, and compassion, as is my mantra, of course. But just to really listen. And those are the skills. I mean, whether we're doing it in our personal life or in our professional lives, active listening, actually taking in what somebody is saying on various levels is a very good thing.
I think it extends as well, Mary Jane, that the active listening, like listening outside but listening inside as well. I think that's the key kind. That's where the magic happens when it kind of goes back to like noticing the emotions, noticing the environment, the internal environment and the external environment. So we're listening on the outside, but we're also actively listening on the inside, like to why am I feeling angry? Am I feeling this way? When that person said X, why am I suddenly feeling anger or fear or God knows whatever emotion it is? So I think that's really another kind of maybe a reminder to kind of it's as important to kind of listen on the inside as it is on the outside, or maybe even more important. But it's certainly a combined effort, I think, that leads to place where we're serving ourselves and serving everyone around us, like when we manage to kind of achieve that balance.
So true, Seamus, because I think that, all are, if it's too one-sided, then it's definitely skewed. Like if you're constantly, like, I don't know. I mean, I think you have to probably, we always talk about start with yourself, or, you know, or we must look inside, you know, to kind of, to see outside. But I think you need to look at, directly what's going on within yourself, and then start to recognize those things, because otherwise, I don't know, you navigate the world in a very skewed way. Always looking outside for yourself for something that's going to explain what's really going on inside.
Yeah, that's true because as human beings, we often tend to look outside of ourselves for whatever you want to call it, validation, um, whereas where we really do need to be starting from the inside and then rippling out um, that wisdom, that knowledge, hopefully, outwards towards others in a way that may be helpful for them, um, or not, as it is, but just, always starting from within and rippling it outward. It's very important for sure.
Zara, did you want to share?
Yeah, thank you for bringing this subject up because I think it's really important to acknowledge that we are always learning. I think there's an Iranian saying I was brought up with that says, from the moment you're born to the day you die, continue to learn. And so every interaction we have um, is an opportunity, as you say. And funny enough, I kind of want to link it to something that I'm learning to do now, which is crochet, which is a bit random, random thing to talk about. There's a lady on LinkedIn who does crochet, and she's helping the girls in the streets in Africa who have just fallen into a bad situation to, help themselves and create something to support themselves. And I thought, how can we take this to the next level? So, sorting out a brand for her, for starters, finding out what the story is, like why is she doing what she's doing. So we ended up having a Zoom session, and we just had a discussion. And I discovered that she's also working in an orphanage. And we see lots of adverts here on the television here to help, these children, these starving children in Africa all the time. My son saw this at school when he was 4, and he was very upset. And he came home one day, said, Mummy, we have to dig a well. I said, why do we have to dig a well? He said, well, there's children, in Africa, and they don't have water. And I thought, okay, I love the fact that I've met this lady now and we're tackling the root cause. And ideally, I want to then get through to the parents of these girls so that they don't put them in a situation where they feel like they need to run away. So unfortunately, it goes back to how education is so prioritized that some parents are becoming violent, basically, to the point the girls are leaving home. And then they have to face that. And then we end up with the kids in the orphanage. Well, that's one outlet. So I thought, okay. And she said she's got this initiative called Sister Hold My Hand. And it goes back to the story behind my brand. And I wanted to hold the hand of a 4-year-old, and my nanny wouldn't let me. And I thought, yeah, this is kind of like the digital version of not being able to work. Yeah, because like you have conversion rates and everybody's talking money and all that kind of stuff. And I thought, no, I really want to do this. Instead of buying fair trade bananas and sticking them on a piece of paper and say that's how we're helping Africa, right? I'd much rather do this. So yeah, I'm going to learn crochet from her. And then I'm going to teach her how to do the storytelling, sorting out the branding, the marketing, introduce her to other people, and ideally at some point help them monetize it, and so that they don't have to deal with shipping costs. So yeah, and I'm sure I learned lots of things along the way, and so I know it's a massive undertaking. So anybody who'd love to be on board with this, give me a shout. Whoever wants to crochet, we're planning on sort of having a chat and just helping each other with what we know as we go along. So yeah, give me a shout if you're interested. Thank you for allowing me to share.
Thank you, Zara. What a beautiful, beautiful like endeavor. And we've spoken about it, and you mentioned it to me, and it really is such a beautiful reciprocity exchange of energy, which is so, I mean, I think it's vital to, everything we do. There is this, you know, it's fine, it's that sort of, the whole exchange of energy when somebody offers you something or helps you in some way, and you doing the same, and in whatever form that takes. And it could be some sort of monetary exchange, but it doesn't really need to be that. And it could be a lot of other things, like, in your case, the sort of exchange of, maybe, ideas and services and, energy and just, hearts, basically. And so that's such a beautiful, beautiful, and I think any sort of relationship, or really, I want to say collaboration or partnership, and I don't like either. Partnership seems kind of formal. I don't know, has to have some sort of reciprocity, because otherwise there's, what happens then? Resentment grows or something. You get the phrases like, you never do this, kind of thing. Those absolute phrases come into the picture. But I think there has to be some sort of feeling of exchange, of mutual exchange.
Yes, absolutely. And she's already growing a community out there with the kind of working mums and non-working mums. And potentially, I'd love to be able to do the trainer on them approach so that they can then roll out how to handle children through their uniqueness. So this kind of thing doesn't happen. But equally, I think my Facebook friends would be very surprised to see, what the actual situation is and how we unfortunately get emotionally blackmailed sometimes in order to fund some of these things where we can actually tackle the root of the problem. And I think that would be my preferred way of serving, rather than constantly giving them a fish. So, that whole digging the well, my son had the right idea. We need to dig a well, not just give them the fish, like help them so that they have to, that they have this water, not sort of, let's buy them a bottle of water every 5 seconds. So that's that business going on. But they also appear to be interested in things like Zumba classes and stuff like that. So who knows where that could go, if there's other people that will turn up and find their own thing they're passionate about doing. So I don't think it's going to stay with the whole crochet. I don't particularly want to do Zumba myself. It doesn't really appeal to me. I'm all over the place trying to copy what other people are doing in a fast pace. But yeah, um, you're right. It is about the exchange, and both parties have to feel passionate about something and want to do it. Otherwise, it becomes, oh, I have to do it, and we have to sort of get to the point of setting that alarm clock on Monday. Yeah.
Right. Well, and also just there's a much more, there's that positivity that comes from, when you feel excited about doing something, or that exchange, versus that kind of attitude of being a burden. And so if you can work in that exchange to celebrate what the other person brings to the table, so to speak, then, it's going to be then there's positivity on both sides. And each person is bringing something that probably is working toward their strength, and something that makes it's like our collaboration, Mary Jane and mine, when she brings her beautiful creative energy to the floor. And then, when I reciprocate in the energy I offer the space.
I like how Jen, I like how you said about my creativity, and it's like the energy. Jen always brings energy to the space, just in her supportive um energy that she brings with her, and of course she brings her beautiful skills of yoga and breath and Reiki and all sorts of wonderful things. But yes, so Janet is downplaying her her strength, but her strength is that energy, that supportive energy that she brings with her everywhere and everything she does. So thank you, Jan.
Oh, Thank you. Anybody else have anything? I mean, I love this whole idea of the exchange of energy because I think that's really what we're talking about in this whole idea of, you know, when we teach, and the whole aspect of teaching and learning and being the student and the teacher at the same time is there is this exchange of energy, and you see it in really great teachers. I mean, I think that there's just this beautiful energy, and I think we all can remember a teacher that had the most amazing impact on us. And it was really interesting. I have a book on my right next to me, which I think I spoke about a number of months ago, which was hold on one second, I'm going to grab it. Yeah, it was put out by Upworthy, if you've ever heard of Upworthy, which are just positive stories. And it was stories from the best of humanity. And so they took 100 people submitted stories of different kindnesses and different acts that people had done that had changed their lives. And they said that the most like I think they had like many more than 100 stories of people who wrote in. The majority of them were actually students who had been influenced by a teacher were the majority of the stories that they received. It's by Gabriel Reilich and Lucia Nell. And it was an amazing, it's an amazing book, and all the stories, are beautiful. But the predominant amount, or the predominant like sort of trend or theme, was people who had been impacted by some sort of teacher in their life. And I think we all have that experience. Maybe not a formal teacher or teacher in school. Maybe it's another teacher that was in your life. But I think we've all had that experience where we're surrounded by someone and we're just like, they teach us so much. I mean, I always think that one of my first teachers that had the greatest impact on my life, as far as life lessons, was my grandmother, who I was really, really close to. I lived with her on and off. We, and so I think that she had the greatest impact. And one of her things, I think one of the primary things, is she was probably never had a negative word to say about anything. Not anyone. I mean, not one person. Like, she would never speak ill of anybody. And it was just this impression of like, oh my gosh, like this whole non-judgmental attitude, which I took very much to heart, I think. Like, it really greatly influenced like who I became. Divine?
Hello, I'm so excited to hear your voices, guys. So good to be here. Thank you so much. So, as everybody was speaking and I was listening, right? I was in listening mode and I was like, should I say anything? I just want to be in listening mode. Can I be in student mode, right? Because we look at student mode as more of like listening and, seeing what resonates with you and if you have anything that you want to ask a question about, but thinking about teacher, um, that there's so much that Seamus has said too about that too, like teacher. I was like, really, at this stage of my life, I have really trying to get away from certain titles and labels of certain things. But at the same time, I see the deeper perspective or the deeper meanings of why we give certain titles and labels as teacher. And I like to dive deeper into every situation and dive deeper into what we're talking about. And when I think about a teacher, I think about just everybody's a freaking genius when it comes to their experience. I'm going to say that again. Everybody is a freaking genius when it comes to their experience. And we are all one conscious connected. So if we can share something, if we can give a word, if we can share an experience, even if it's knowledge or information, some people just want your knowledge and information. They're like, just give me the information, give me the knowledge. I don't give a damn about what you've been through. I don't care about your experience. I don't want to hear your stories. Just give me the details, right? Because I used to teach astrology a lot. And I'm still into astrology. I'm into esoteric and astrology, metaphysics, and those things. And some people just like, I gave a lot of information. But the information that I was giving it's so important for people to also see how they can embody that information for themselves. And I know that I have a lot of teacher energy, I will say. I call it teacher energy. A lot of wisdom energy, a lot of teacher energy, and people just naturally are drawn to me to ask me questions. And I know all of you guys have this too, right? And people are naturally drawn to ask questions or ask you for advice, or, we just know who to reach out to, when to do it, where to hold space at, where to show up at, even if we're trying to learn something or just receive something, right? There's an energetic frequency that our heart is a bigger brain than, the heart is a bigger portal. It's a bigger brain particles in the heart as well. And it's magnetic. It draws you in where you need to be at the right time, at the right space. And it's just like, okay, I'm going to be here and I'm going to receive here. There's always an exchange, right? The giver, the receiver, the exchange of energy, of time, of information. And, I'm really in this moment in my life where I'm really embodying the most important information for my next level, I will say, right? Because life is a journey, and embodying the information for my next level so I can be the frequency, you know? And I know I don't know everything and I don't want to know everything. And maybe I do know a lot and just don't need to say anything sometimes too. Because I remember where I used to, being a parent as well, right? All these authority titles, labels, teacher, professor, professional, parent, and even being there for my children, I had to lean back out of that quote unquote teacher mode and to be in allowing mode, be the observant mode, hold space mode, allow them to make mistakes and try things on their own. And, I was telling my son last night, I said, you got to try on your own. I said, I can give you the answer, but you're not going to learn. You learn through movement. You learn through putting your energy in it, right? So I think that's so important too, as well. It's like we can regurgitate and give information. We can teach. We can share our experiences, our stories. Some people don't want to hear your experiences and your stories, right? So it's like knowing where you are, who's in your circle, or where you're around, if that is the time and place to share something, especially intimate and deep things, right? And everybody's not intimate and deep like me. That is a hard pill that I had to swallow. Even in relationships and connection with people, I had to understand, listen, you can't fully attach yourself to people emotionally or expect them to be deeply connected or dive deep like you do when it comes to different aspects or perspectives or, genres of different things. So it's about accepting the totality of self and realizing that we all have an ability to be the quote unquote teacher and student. We're all geniuses, right? I'll end it there, loves.
Thank you so much, Divine. One of the things you really resonated with me, and that was the power of story. And I think that I've been really sitting with that a lot lately. I shared with Seamus this beautiful podcast, um, and on it, and I guess maybe because I just spoke about grandmothers, they have something which was created called a friendship bench, which is basically these grandmothers that sit on a bench and kind of help people with problems. And it's now, I think, in many, many different countries. But this whole idea of them and how involved and how intricate it was important for the healing process, like them sharing sort of basically stories and experience and with people who were suffering with emotional and mental problems and just this whole and probably some physical ailments too, when they would kind of match the grandmothers up with people with that had specific types of issues. But this whole idea of speaking to somebody and them sharing their experience, even if they don't express it, like even if they don't communicate it, there is a different presence to them of sort of, and you feel that energy of when they listen, they get it versus a superficial kind of like they're just hearing the words. And so Mary Jane spoke to this as far as active listening. So I'm going to share the podcast link maybe in the comment section, but it was a really beautiful, beautiful, I thought, example. And I actually thought of someone who I think would be really good at it. So, as far as like, doing a training or whatever. And they spoke about, how long it takes to train the grandmothers, so to speak, to be in this position and everything. It was just such a great idea, which I thought was like, how wonderful is that? Like to go sit next to somebody on a bench and and be impacted and shared and hopefully be able to move through a situation that's challenging at the moment. Al, did you want to share something?
Yeah, I want to share the acronym of LEARN. Okay,
Okay,
LEARN.
yes, please.
Okay, well, we have the three L's, the life learning process, a long life learning. Yeah, okay. So when the L is for looking, when you're looking, we have to look and closely, affectionately, and close affectionately, because the double O is like our eyes. We have to look around ourselves very enclosed and affectionately. For example, we look in the nature. There's a nest on top of a tree on a branch. Then you can see the little bird. The mom is feeding the worms to the little bird. So you have to look it very closely and affectionately. And at the same time, that's how we learn things. Not necessarily people teaching all the time, but when we look around our surroundings, we go to the nature, we see things are flying around and moving, even insects, the very, very small, minute things around us, And at the same time, also through the learning process, we also have the reading and nurturing. So it's a looking and close affectionately, reading, nurturing. So once we read, we also nurture in our minds, our or the learning process entirely through our system, embodying like what we're saying, embodying and creating the energy around us. Once we learn the things around us, then that's how we are so in depth with the knowledge and all that. Last time when I went to Australia, when I was studying in the college, when studying maths and all that. So my teacher always keep on asking me, well, I keep on interrupting him. I keep on asking questions. Then say, hey, hold on your horses, Al. Hold on your horses. Let me finish first. So I was so eager to learn, everything. I keep on asking and asking questions along these teaching classes. So basically, this is what. Yeah, I'll put that in the chat. The acronym of the learn. Thank you.
Thank you, Al. Yes, please put it in the chat.
I love Val's acronyms.
I know, me too. Me too.
There's always insight in there.
always. There's always learning.
Yes, there you go.
Always learning. Yeah. Zara, did you want to add something?
Yes, it's fairly lengthy, so I'm going to try and keep it brief. I love the idea of the grandma on the bench thing. However, recently I had such a big problem that I don't think any grandma could have helped me through it. I think you would have needed a grandma who's got a lawyer's hat, who understands system design thinking, who understands politics between family, who's aware of all the disability acts between two different countries. Oh, it was a nightmare. But what really helped me was reading a book by John, and we talk about teachers divine. John Lenhart is a chemical engineer by trade, but he's actually a teacher, and he's probably one of the people I've learned the most from, I'd say, over the last 5 years. It has been life-changing information for me, anyways. And so reading this book, he talks about how to get to the truth and using the principles of truth, which is non-contradiction. So if you're looking at two systems, they have to be the same in both places. It can't be one thing over here and another thing over there. I'll give you an example. You can't be married here and not married over there, or disabled over here or not disabled over there. And so the people in Iran, which is a situation I was facing with, wanted to go by the information they had. However, the whole thing was going to fall apart eventually. So how do you handle, dealing with a lawyer who seems to think they know best, knowing this is actually going to all go wrong? We could be paying a lot of money to these people to do it all the wrong way. So one is non-contradiction. The other one is contrastive thinking, going, well, can I be wrong? Can I be wrong about this? So I said, okay, let's go along with them. And but instead of doing this, why don't you go after that thing that you qualify for if you're single, or you know? And they came back saying, no, we don't qualify for that because they've checked this end. So it started to fall apart automatically. And the other thing he talks about is causality, not forgetting the cause. Like, what is it that person is after? Are they looking for tangible things or intangible things? Are they looking for quality or quantity of something? And if we want to be happy, it's about having quality and focusing on the intangible. So things like, the happiness of the people involved, peace, not having too many fights over silly things. And so it did take a long time, but following those principles, it kind of helped me work my way through it, despite the fact there were lawyers standing there telling me what needs to be done in that system and then saying this is different over here. So sometimes we learn the lesson by following a book that we believe works, yeah, that we've seen it working in other, we've put it to test in other things, and then we take that leap of faith to test it out in a bigger environment. And I don't know who's going to learn the lessons here, whether it's going to be me or the lawyer, but I guess time will tell.
Well, I would say probably you're both going to learn the lessons. You're both going to learn something. It's just probably going to be different things, you know? Um, you're going to learn what you need to learn, and hopefully the lawyer's going to learn what he needs to learn, but that's not you know, that's up to him, that's up to he or she. But I think, if you go with that, one teaches to learn, yeah, I mean, whatever the circumstance, that's true to some extent. Seamus, did you want to share something? Or
Yeah, yeah. It's just coming back to a topic we discussed, like what Zara just shared, reminds me of like, and maybe what we touched on maybe briefly earlier, a little bit about identity and the identity we assume as the expert, and the expertise versus the wisdom. And I think there's a comment in the chat there as well about the blending that happens, like between when we're showing up outside and forcing and pushing and being knowledgeable as the expert. We're kind of disconnected from the wisdom of our individual inner knowing, I guess. And that's kind of what's coming to mind here, like in this whole transfer of wisdom, when people are operating less from the assumed external identity and more grounded in their true natural wisdom and essence. And I think the more you force, um, the less likely you are to be able to open that channel to transmit wisdom and receive wisdom from others. And I kind of that's kind of back to there's no teachers, no students idea, that when you're not forcing and when you're grounded in your own true value, that's when that value is more likely to emerge and transmit outwards, and other people's value is likely to influence you, or you be open to the learnings and the natural flow of knowledge, like the receptors in our cells. The receptors are transmitters as well, so they exchange proteins and all sorts of energy at the cell level. And I think that's how we operate as human beings as well. When we're being the cell we're meant to be, that's when the magic happens, I suppose. That's kind of what's coming to mind.
absolutely, Seamus, because I think when you live in that space of having to perform, or let's say come into something and you have this idea about how you want to be, um, or what's going to happen, there is no space for any of that, right? I mean, you've then limited all the learning, and all the possibility sort of is kind of like almost squeezed out of it, because there's no space at all. And with anything, it's kind of like a fire. The only way a fire burns is if it has the air to burn or the air to breathe. And if it doesn't, then it's extinguished immediately. It goes out. And the same thing happens between some sort of exchange of energy or some sort of learning where you both you go into a conversation where there's space, there's oxygen, there's ability for stuff to move around a little bit. It's also where creation happens, it's where evolution and ideas come from and, creativity ends up flowing because otherwise there's no room for it to breathe at all. Divine, did you want to share? Oh, Mary Jane, go ahead.
No, I really love because as you know, I'm a visual person, so I really loved the picture you were painting just now, Jan, with the fire and how um it needs the air to breathe like it and well, of course it is living, but it's a living being in itself. And I just want to say I really loved the painting you were painting. So thank you,
Oh,
Jan.
you're welcome. You're welcome. Divine?
Yes, this is such a good information and conversation. I'm a visual person too. I'm visual and I'm also audio, and I think that that's a good point too, is that we all learn differently. We all perceive, we all absorb differently, information. And my son brought something to my attention. He had to go to summer school this year because his STAR test was a little bit lower than usual, but his academics all through the school year are great. And I'm like, okay, we're just going to let you go for 15 days, right? Because it's only 15 days here in Texas. Okay, go do your 15 days. And I said, just take the formulas that you really want to focus on so you can get better scores for the STAR test. And I said, everything else that they're having you learn, I said, your brain probably won't remember it much. I'm going to say your mind because the brain is to keep us to survive and help our organs and stuff. But the mind is only going to remember what's really important for you to have. I think that we don't trust our minds enough at times. I really think that a lot of us, because we've been told or taught to be, all about learning and we got to learn and we got to, focus on our mindset. But the thing is that a lot of us don't understand the heart and how big the heart is a bigger portal than the brain, the mind, right? And how the heart has so many different particles of knowing things we already know. How many times have you researched something or looked up something or somebody came to you with some information and you had a deep knowing about it already? It's just like the confirmation or the more clarity that you may have needed, you know? And I always go by the 80-20 rule. I used to do this when I was teaching. And the 80-20 rule, I tell people all the time, 80 the 80% is about you getting into it, feeling into it, your intuition. Okay. The 20% is the knowledge and the information that you choose to research. All right. Because even if you get the 20% knowledge and information and you sit with it, you allow yourself to feel through it, get into it, you're going to pick up more information. It's like a genius, right? It's like your mind is like a genius and your heart is even bigger than the mind. So do you connect the both? Things are going to come to you and you're going to be like, how I know this information and I didn't even have to go outside of myself to find it. So I think a lot of things I tell people all the time, the biggest wound of humanity is a trust wound. We don't know how to trust ourselves. We're always looking for that backup information or something that says, okay, this is it, right? And it's like, no, can you just say to yourself, this is it? So I think it takes a lot of time with sitting with self and allowing self to be merged with the heart, to be merged with our own genius that we all have. But when we come together, like spaces like this, our genius kind of like flickers and tickers and goes off more in expansive ways. I always like to keep notes when I'm here. I really appreciate you guys. I'll land it.
Oh, thank you, Divine. I love that idea of flickering, of like all these little sparks that come up when we're all together, um, that create that flame. And um, I agree with you as far as we don't trust ourselves. It's probably one of my main, kind of things that I try to impart to people or help them realize is how truly powerful they are, how true their knowing, and how wise they really, they are. And I think it is. It's kind of weeded out of us. It's squashed in a lot of circumstances through education and through this whole idea of someone knows more than I do, because they have some sort of, you know, letters at the end of their name or whatever, but they don't know you. And so,
Jan,
yeah.
there is a squirrel outside the window and he's actually sitting up and looking at me.
I
So
love
if you guys are into it, if you feel led to it, look up squirrel symbolic meaning or squirrel spirit animal. And I think this is definitely a message here of how we
Okay.
gather, right? How we gather information, how we can, just, I'll land it there. But I had to tell you, this squirrel is just all up in my face in the window.
I love it. And I am hugely into animal symbolism. Always, that kind of thing is really resonates with me. And I'm always like looking up, somewhere, what the meaning of something is, because I do think they are true messengers. And I think they are, they're gatherers,
Mhm.
um, they're preparers. Like, if you think about preparing for winter, or they like, they go out and they kind of gather in and they nest. Yeah, squirrel looking for the nuts. That's right, Al, and so we're all here kind of gathering in the little jewels or gems that we've all shared.
I was just wondering if that was a commentary on this on this group, or just looking for nuggets of nourishment. I'll take it as that. How's that?
I agree with you, Mary Jane, absolutely.
Uh,
So
uh,
I know you drew a card, Mary Jane. Did you want to share it with everybody?
yeah, I would like to quickly share it because I drew the card, just feeling the urge to pull one for the group, and so it definitely pulled in the energy of the group and the conversation today for sure. And the card I pulled from the Raise Your Vibration deck was You Are Not Alone. Everything in the entire universe is connected. You are connected to your angels, your ancestors, your current loved ones, or even future generations. For that reason and many more, you are not alone. Today, the universe is reminding you that even when you feel alone, there is a lot more support available to you than you realize. The spiritual path isn't a soul path. You don't have to figure everything out on your own. You don't have to carry a personal burden. You don't have to hide your weaknesses in order to succeed. When this card comes to you, you are being guided to be open to welcoming in help, either by accepting it when it is offered or by asking for it when it is required. Allowing in support doesn't make you weak or wounded. It makes you strong and real. In fact, when you refuse support on a human level, there's a good chance that you are building up walls that stop you from experiencing help on a spiritual level. It's time to remove these blockages so that you can experience the truth that you are never, ever alone. And the vibe of the day is I open up to help and support on all levels.
Well, thank you so much, Mary Jane. That was truly beautiful. Maybe we'll take a photo of
Mhm.
the card and the description and put it in the comments section for the
Yes,
event that you all can have it.
absolutely.
So we're going to move into our meditation today, just a few moments. So just begin by settling in. Find a comfortable position. It can be seated or lying down, standing. Allow your body to feel supported by by the chair, by the seat, by the floor. Gently close your eyes or soften your gaze and bring your awareness to your breath. Without changing it, simply notice the rise and fall. The breath that enters and the breath that leaves. The rhythm that has been with you all along. Pause here for a moment, letting your body know it's safe. It's safe to slow down. Now bring into your heart the essence of this mantra. When one teaches, two learn. And let these words echo gently in your mind like a quiet bell. As you inhale, breathe in the wisdom of shared learning. And as you exhale, release the need to have all the answers. Allow yourself to soften into the understanding that every time you teach or share, no matter how small, you are learning something too. Maybe you've taught a class, offered advice to a friend, held space for someone's grief, or spoken your truth in a moment of vulnerability. Let a moment, a memory rise where you shared something meaningful. Notice what it taught you. Notice how it changed you, how you became the student too. Now gently turn that awareness inward. There is a wise teacher inside of you, a part of you that knows, that senses, that feels deeply. There's also a curious student within you, always watching, always discovering. Invite these two parts of yourself into a quiet dialogue. Maybe silently ask yourself, what am I here to learn today? What am I being invited to share? Let whatever arises be enough. A word, an image, a sensation. Breathe into the space between offering and receiving, between the knowing and the wondering, between teaching and learning. This is the space of growth, of connection, of transformation. Take a deep breath in. Feel the wisdom that lives in your body, your experience, your heart. And as you breathe out, offer that wisdom freely to yourself, to others, to the world. Let's close with an affirmation. Gently repeat to yourself if you'd like. Each time I teach, I learn. Each time I listen, I grow. I am both teacher and student, whole, evolving, and enough. When you feel ready, begin to bring gentle movement to your body. Feel free to wiggle fingers and toes. Slowly begin to blink your eyes open if they're closed. And carry this awareness of being the teacher and the student at the same time. The dance of giving and receiving. And know that in every exchange, a spark of learning unfolds on both ends. Thank you all so much for your presence here today, for this beautiful conversation. Each one, whether you were just listening today and shared beautiful comments, or just your energy, or for those who shared audibly, we so appreciate each and every one of you. And that is what makes these experiences, these conversations, truly a learning and a teaching opportunity.
Yes, it's so beautiful. And thank you for those that were in the listening mode today as well for bringing your beautiful energy to this space. Because whether you're a speaker or not, you're bringing your energy here. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. So everyone have a wonderful weekend. Just, whatever you decide or whatever you're doing, take a moment maybe to connect with Mary Jane and I throughout the week. We will be back next Friday, hopefully. And yeah, and our next workshop is June 28th, a Saturday at 2 p.m. If anybody would like to participate, we would love to have you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Have a blessed weekend.
Yes, many blessings.